welcome back to the Forsters Law podcast. I'm Miri Stickland, Knowledge Development Lawyer in the Commercial Real Estate team, and I'm joined today via the medium of Zoom by a trio of partners from across the Commercial Real Estate team. We've got podcast first-timer Magnus Hassett from the Transactional team, and podcast returnees Ben Barrison from our Property Litigation team, and last but no means least, Emily Holdstock from our Construction team. Welcome, all of you.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hi, Mary.
So today we're about a month into the lockdown measures in the UK, and we're going to talk through some of the issues that we've seen in the real estate market as a result of the arrival of the COVID-19 pandemic. So Ben and Magnus, if I can start off with you, from an investment and sort of property management point of view, what are some of the key challenges that we've been helping clients deal with over the last few weeks?
Well, I think the biggest ones I've seen, Miri, are rent, how it's going to be paid, how any concessions are going to be dealt with, queries about insurance. Can the landlords claim on their policies? Do the tenants have business interruption insurance? And we've been fielding quite a few queries about site security and managing things like shopping centres and retail parks where you may have one tenant that's still open, but the majority of which have shut.
Yeah, and from a transactional point of view, Mary, there's been some interesting practical stuff around how you get land registry documents wet ink signed in the current environment, and which courier needs to go where. Can I use an electronic form of signature like DocuSign with a kind of further assurance clause to help me out with the registration aspects of that? We've also got interesting debates on a few deals around whether there should be a kind of force majeure clause related to coronavirus. So, should my completion date or should my works target date be extendable by reference to a coronavirus event, and in what circumstances should that be triggered or be brought to an end? Just generally speaking, obviously, helping clients navigate the uncertainty of what we're going through has been interesting for us. So we've had to adopt some new technologies like Zoom quite quickly. And we've been running Zoom clinics for clients where we've got a transactional lawyer and a litigation lawyer on the same call, just fielding general queries. And I think a number of clients have found that really useful.
Absolutely. Ben, you mentioned shopping centres and retail. Are they the sectors feeling the biggest impact of the pandemic? And what kind of steps are you seeing clients taking to try and mitigate that? And I suppose that applies in all sectors.
I think that's right, Miri. I mean, the main queries we're getting from clients are the retail and the hospitality sectors, as those industries are dependent on footfall, and they're within the bracket of those that have been told by the government they have to shut. We're seeing a real range of approaches from our clients, as I think a lot of them recognise that some of their tenants are genuinely in serious financial difficulties at the moment, as they're dependent on customers and guests coming through and spending money. Other tenants are in not such serious difficulties, but nevertheless are seeing a bit of a downturn. So a lot of our landlord clients are taking a case-by-case approach, looking to nurse some tenants through. With others, they're looking to take a slightly firmer line and are asking for some quite detailed financial information to gauge quite how bad the situation is for the tenants, which I think is fair enough. As in amongst all of this, we've got to remember that the landlords are running businesses too and are dependent on the income. I think a lot of people are adopting immediate concessions. Equally, I think my impression is a lot of the market are prepared to watch at the moment. We've had a bad quarter in March for a lot of people in terms of rent payments. We've got the June quarter coming up, which will be nearly 3 months of no trading for a lot of tenants. So whether that's going to be even worse than the March quarter. And we have a lot of people at the moment lobbying the government for further measures to be implemented to help businesses.
Yeah, and what's interesting is that, sort of, as Ben says, on a case-by-case basis, you have got landlords and occupiers exploring ways to resolve non-payment of rent in a mutually satisfactory way. So, could that look like a rent holiday for 3 or 6 months combined with an extension to that tenant's lease? I think we're certainly seeing a few of those sorts of deals coming through. I think one sector which is proving pretty resilient is logistics, as you might expect if you've tried to place an Ocado order recently. There's ongoing development that we're dealing with, ongoing land acquisition, and we've got lettings to the usual suspects in the logistics sector as well. So I think that's one sector which is doing okay for now.
I think it's fair to say, Magnus, isn't it, that the people who are actually consulting, cooperating and collaborating with each other are getting some quite mutually beneficial packages arranged at an early stage and are working their way through the issues.
Yeah, I think that's right.
So we have seen the enactment of some legislation, the Coronavirus Act 2020. Ben, what impact has the Act had, and has the legislation actually gone far enough?
Well, at the moment, Miri, you've got the legislation has put a moratorium on the landlord's ability to forfeit for non-payment of rent until the 30th of June. That means the landlord cannot change the locks and cannot pursue an action for forfeiture through the court. It doesn't do anything to the tenant's underlying obligation to pay the rent. So that is on the commercial property side. On the residential property side, the government has extended timeframes for residential proceedings and stayed every current action and any new actions. There was a little bit of confusion in the market as the original effect of the legislation was to stop all possession proceedings, including trespassers. But as of about 24 hours ago, an amendment has been made. So if there are squatters, people can still take action through the courts to clear the land. In terms of whether the legislation's gone far enough, I think if the intention of the legislation is to get as many people through this period as possible, then from a tenant perspective and landlord perspective, perhaps it hasn't. I can see grounds on which the tenant would say, why have you stopped forfeiture and left the landlords with the ability to pursue winding up proceedings? And the landlords may say, well, just about every single other sector is getting a lot of support. What about our reliance on the rent payments? So my feeling is that there's more to come. I think there's a lot of support in the retail industry for the government to do more to help the tenants out. And I would expect if the government does that, that the landlords will get some sort of comfort as well.
Okay, we need to bring Emily in here because she's been silent for far too long. So Emily, from a development point of view, are projects still managing to proceed? And if they're not, then what are the consequences of site closures?
So the answer to that is, Miri, yes, sites are continuing to be open. I think initially, the first week or so after the lockdown, we had lots of clients contacting us saying what should be happening, should contractors be closing sites? And I think there was a lot of uncertainty, not helped by the fact we had people like Sadiq Khan coming out in London saying that he thought all construction sites should be shut, and the government saying very little or nothing about construction sites. But since then, there has been a flurry of sort of guidance and advice, which does make it clear that projects can continue safely, that social distancing measures should obviously be implemented where that's practicable. And the Health and Safety Executive have also now got involved in sort of monitoring projects site by site. So even where we have had sites that have closed down for a short period of time, contractors are now coming back onto site. We're seeing building merchants that are open, supplying materials and things. So it is possible for construction works to continue, and anecdotally that is what we're seeing and what our clients and contacts are seeing. If sites are either forced to close or are closed by mutual agreement between client and contractor, which we are seeing some clients agree, then the practical consequences of that really are to make sure that insurers are notified of the consequences of the closure. And also making sure that the site is safe and secure and that materials and equipment is safely locked away. We're giving a lot of advice at the moment to clients about those kind of practical aspects of a suspension on site and what the contractual provisions around that might be.
And sort of looking forward, I guess with your litigation hat on, which provisions of construction contracts are we going to see tested the most rigorously as a result of the lockdown?
So it's twofold really, Miri. I mean, we're seeing with construction contracts which are being negotiated at the moment, with my non-contentious hat on, we're seeing very similar to what Magnus mentioned earlier, actually, in terms of clients wanting to negotiate a reasonable position now with a contractor about the consequences of coronavirus over the next few months on supply of materials and available workforce. So I think the provisions that are going to be tested in that context, and also where contracts are already in place, will be provisions around delays to projects, site suspension, and the provisions which might or might not entitle a contractor to claim additional money as a result of any delays associated with coronavirus. And ultimately, depending on how long all of this goes on for, most standard form construction contracts will permit termination in certain circumstances. So the key for some of our clients and their project team is just to monitor how long any site suspensions and that kinds of thing are going on, because we don't want inadvertently certain rights to start arising without us having sort of thought through properly the consequences of that.
Okay, so final question, which I'm going to throw open to all of you, because we want to end on a positive note. What kind of positives can we take, do you think, from this experience? Magnus, do you want to start us off?
Of course, yeah. Well, yeah, I'm just thinking back to those initial days of lockdown, nearly 5 weeks ago now, and that sense of almost panic about, can we make this work? And what I think the last month or so has shown is that working from home can work. The resilience of the Forsters team, the way we've looked after our clients and each other during that period, I think has been, really inspiring. Separately, I think, the way we've had to accelerate adoption of new technology really is perhaps a guide for the future as well. I think, calls like this on Zoom, where we can all see each other, probably, got to be better than doing conference calls in the old-fashioned way going forward. And I suspect they'll replace those kind of 30-minute cross-London meetings where you had to hop on the tube. But perhaps clients will prefer just to do a Zoom call now. And then finally, for me, I think time with the family at home, and having that sense of being able to work flexibly during the day, getting the work done whilst sort of having time for other stuff at home. And perhaps that's, again, a guide for us in terms of people's long-term view of what agile working looks like.
Emily, Ben, anything to add?
I think for me, the biggest change professionally has been, obviously when we left the office, we brought a certain amount of paper with us. And since then, I haven't printed anything. So I've done 5 weeks. If you'd asked me 5 weeks ago, I'd have said, construction lawyers need a lot of paper. And actually that's not true. And I'm managing to function perfectly well with my Surface Pro and my stylus. So that's a big learning point for me. But I think also actually what Magnus touched on, the availability of DocuSign and how revolutionary that's been actually in terms of getting things signed, particularly construction lawyers. We've got lots and lots of documents that will go out at any one time, boxes and boxes sometimes, and having an ability to email them out in electronic format is quicker and saves a lot of trees, I think. So I think it'll be great if we can embrace that kind of technology when we're back in the office.
I would echo that. I mean, as you say, we've had to embrace it due to necessity. And, there's been quite a lot of sort of skirting around the edges, particularly in the real estate field. I mean, DocuSign's nothing new to corporate lawyers, but for us, it's been, quite a steep learning curve and something that I think everybody has had to just jump on board with and almost sort of get over their reservations. Ben, anything you want to add? Doesn't have to be about DocuSign.
I've really enjoyed being able to have lunch and dinner with my family every day. It sounds, you suddenly realise how often when you're at work you're coming home and everyone's eaten already. Also, the tech piece and the fact that this has given every business the opportunity to almost re-examine 100 years worth of working practices and work out that actually we can do, as Emily says, I've hardly printed anything. I'm doing these Zoom calls with clients for a litigator. So often I'm parachuted in. Can you have an hour on the phone with a client or send an email? This is a queue. I've been meeting people that I've dealt with over the phone for the last, say, year or 6 months and actually seeing them face to face, because actually there's the opportunity with the tech. And I can't believe we didn't do it before.
I have to say, from a printing point of view, I've definitely printed more schoolwork than work. I'm getting my third set of new Canon cartridges coming today, I think.
Thanks all so much for joining me today. It's been really nice to see you virtually, at least. And if listeners would like to check out our other podcasts, they're available on SoundCloud, Spotify, Apple Podcasts and other providers. If you'd like more information on the firm, you can visit our website, forsters.co.uk, or on all the usual social media feeds, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. And until next time, goodbye. Forsters Modern Law Podcast is for general information only and should not be considered to be professional advice. Forsters LLP accepts no liability or responsibility for any direct or consequential loss arising from the use of, reliance on or reference to this podcast. Forsters LLP makes no warranty or representation as to the accuracy of the information contained in this podcast. The Modern Law Podcast and all copyright in it is the property of Forsters LLP and it should not be used, reproduced or quoted, whether in whole or part, without Forsters LLP's prior written consent.